Hey YouTube, it is not a tumor. It's not a tumor. Hey guys, what up? Tominator here. I wanted to today discuss Dallas McCarver because he's fresh in my mind. I'm sure he's fresh in a lot of your minds if you watched the Arnold Classic last weekend where he took that runner-up spot. So even though that was a depleted lineup, it's still pretty impressive for a kid who's only 25 years old to take second place in the Arnold Classic competition. So yeah, there's a lot of hype surrounding this guy, and rightfully so. I don't think there's been this much hype since Big Rammy, to be honest. No offense to other newcomers like Nathan Diasha or Justin Compton, but that's what it is. And a lot of people are even comparing him and to Jay Cutler, saying he's going to be the next Jay Cutler in bodybuilding. So that's pretty exciting to think about. So I wanted to weigh in on this topic, give my 2 cents. Do I think that he has the potential to do that? You know what? Just maybe. Maybe. It's all going to depend on how well he progresses these next couple of years, but I think that he definitely has the potential. I do already see a lot of similarities between the two guys in terms of their structure, in terms of their strong body parts, and their weak points as well. They look very comparable in several poses, so yeah, there's definitely a lot of parallels to be drawn here, and it is a fair comparison. That said, I'm not. Don't get me wrong, guys. I'm not saying that Dallas McCarver is on Jay Cutler's level. That's just plain BS. Of course not. Jay's a four-time Mr. Olympia winner. He was top 2 in the world for like 10 or 11 years running. So, like, come on. Dallas has a ton of work ahead of him if he ever wants to live up to that. But anyway, this video is just going to be kind of about pointing out their similarities and their differences, and also what I think Dallas needs to do if he ever wants to become as much of a legend as Jay Cutler is. So I'm going to do this the usual way, break it down pose by pose, and I'll get into more detail there. So let's start it off with the front double bicep. So right off the bat, what jumps out to me is these guys are both mass monsters, obviously. They both have huge rib cages, which makes them appear very wide and full through the chest and the lats. They both have these very well developed serratus muscles right here. They both have a great set of wheels, right? They're both relatively thick through the waist. Dallas, not so much here, but, keep in mind he's only 25, and Jay here was only around 28. And, the waist just tends to get wider and more distended with age and all their supplement use, right? So we can only expect this to get worse or at best stay the same. It's not going to get smaller. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a cause for concern for Dallas considering how young he is, and he's already seen showing some signs of distension. So he's got to keep that in check and try not to get carried away playing the mass game. But anyway, back to this pose. The arms are pretty similar on both guys, although Jay's biceps are a little peakier, right? Dallas doesn't have that. He's not really predisposed to that peak shape in the bicep, but that's okay. His arms are still massive. That said, though, both guys are pretty weak in the forearm department. Compared to these massive upper arms, this was always a weak point for Jay, but, it didn't really hold him back. Didn't stop him from winning or placing well, so I don't think it'll be a hindrance to Dallas either, even if he never brings them up from here. So that's not really too concerning. The legs, though, Cutler's just look more quality. They're way more deeply separated. You can see some feathering here and the teardrops in the outer head, whereas Dallas doesn't have any of that, and they're not as deeply cut. On the other hand, though, he's got these freaky Dorian-like calves, whereas Jay always had a great set of calves, but these are not elite calves. They're not to be mentioned in the same breath as Mike Matarazzo or Dorian Yates, whereas Dallas, I think you can already say that they can be. So that's very impressive. Let's move on to the next pose, though. Front relaxed pose, because I could not find a single photo of Dallas in the front lat spread. So this one will have to do. What jumps out to me right away is the delts on both these guys. Just look very dominant. Jay Cutler for a little while there, I think he did have the best shoulders in the game. Especially when Marcus Rule kind of declined, Ronnie was out of the picture, and before Phil Heath really started dominating. I'd say that Jay had the best shoulders in bodybuilding for a few years there. And Dallas, if anything, has already bigger and better shoulders, so that is quite incredible and mind-blowing. Calves and shoulders are this guy's strongest body parts for sure, hands down. Whereas with Jay, it was more the shoulders and the quads. As good as Jay's quads are, though, they were never really known for having a lot of sweep. He didn't really have too much of that. Whereas Dallas, I think, already has a better sweep. And you could argue that's just because the way he's placing his feet, he's probably spreading them out more, creating that illusion of more sweep, whereas Jay's are more head-on probably. And maybe to a degree, but then again, I've never seen Jay exhibiting a lot of outer quad sweep. He never had that kind of coveted X frame. So with him, it was more just about the separation and the striations and everything. So I think Dallas already has better width and sweep to his quads. He just needs to dial them in and really hone in on this definition. Because the calves are amazing. He has the potential to have a world-class lower body. And it's pretty much already there. It just needs more refinement. What else can we say about this? I guess their arms both look very smooth and unimpressive in this pose, but that's okay because it's not really one which showcases the arms. So let's move on to the side chest. In this one, though, the resemblance is uncanny. I mean, right down to this vein snaking down the front of the delt. I mean, are these guys related or something? This is almost a mirror image. They're hitting it pretty much the same way, too, exactly. But here's what I was saying about the shoulder. You can see Dallas's looks bigger than Jay's, and these pictures might not be exactly to scale, but it's pretty close. Jay is a little bit shorter than him, so if anything, Jay's photo here should look even a little smaller than it does. But Dallas's shoulder from front to back looks quite a bit wider than Jay's. That said, though, I feel like Jay's shoulders were much more better balanced with his chest, whereas Dallas, a little bit in this pose, but definitely you'll see it in other poses like the most muscular. His shoulders are just too overpowering sometimes. So that just means he's going to have to work even harder to bring up this chest, because in this photo right here, it actually looks pretty good, but I was noticing in the Arnold Classic, it looked quite a bit flatter and smaller, and it just looked like a bit of a weakness that he needs to address. So that's something that he'll have to work on if he ever wants to make it to the top level at the Olympia. But on the other hand, one point that I would give in his favor over Jay is the hamstring sweep here, whereas Jay, doesn't really have one, and he never really did have much sweep in his hams or his quads, so his legs always looked a little bit, underwhelming from the side. And I mean, both guys look really good here in this side chest pose, though. So Dallas actually looks more impressive here than I think any of his pictures in the Arnold this year. So maybe his pecs were just a little fuller or something, or the lighting was better at the Olympia. I don't know. But let's move on. Back double bicep. This is where these guys start to diverge, and they don't really look so similar anymore from the back poses. You can see what I'm saying about Dallas's delts just being completely overpowering. They overshadow his back, and his back now looks pretty weak in comparison. So that's the main area that Dallas needs to bring up if he ever wants to be a Mr. Olympia in the future. He's got to bring up this back, especially the upper back in terms of the width and the thickness and the detail. Because right now, this just there's just not much to say here. I mean, it's okay, but it's not great. Even Jay's looks more impressive through he's got a lot more detail and thickness through the upper back. His shoulders aren't as big, but they look more balanced with the rest of his body, whereas Dallas's are really overpowering everything, even his arms, which are pretty huge still in their own right. The lower body, both these guys are not really super dialed in, and there's not too much to pick apart here. I mean, you could argue you see more grooves in Dallas's hamstrings here, but then this one not so much. So I don't know. They're pretty comparable in the lower body in this comparison. The lower back, we'll talk about that in 1 second. Let's do it right now. Rear lat spread. So the lower back is another area that I feel Dallas is already better than Jay ever was. You can see a bit of a Christmas tree here in the rear lat spread, whereas with Jay, it's like, nothing. You see this line down the center, which is not bad, but other than that, nothing. Just some little folds and wrinkles down here. That's the thing with Cutler, is he tended to hold a lot of water and, just get kind of wrinkly in the lower back. He didn't really have much, definition or muscle, muscle maturity or whatever you want to call it. No density down there. Dallas already has more of that. Because he deadlifts like a motherfucker. So that said, I think Jay still looks much better in this pose because he's much wider. He's got way more thickness through the traps and the upper back than Dallas is showing. Dallas just looks very ho-hum, mediocre, nothing special. If he either needs to bring up his width a ton, or he's got to add that kind of 3D thickness that Phil's bringing, and I don't think he's ever going to achieve that because pretty much no one has that. So he's got to get much wider and then also add the thickness and the detail. So this kid's got to just hammer the back like a madman, hit it from all different angles, and that's what she said. But yeah, like just do tons of different grips and different rows, different pull downs. He's really got to bring up that back if he ever wants to make it to Jay Cutler's level. And yeah, side tricep, not a very good picture here, to be honest. The lighting looks kind of shitty in Dallas's pic. Jay looks amazing. Lots of detail. Even his pecs look really good. But yeah, both guys, as good as Jay's pecs look in some of these pictures, pecs were never really a strong body part for him, and he admits that. He really had to work hard to bring up that thickness and add the detail and balance them out with the shoulders, because he was always kind of genetically predisposed to having dominant delts and a relatively shallow, flat chest. It's just kind of flat and square, just like Dallas's. So if Dallas can bring up his chest to be in as good balance with his shoulders as what Jay was able to do, then, man, watch out. From the front, this kid's going to be near unbeatable. The ab and thigh, again, they don't really look too similar in this pose either. I feel like Dallas he's more reminiscent of a Dorian Yates here, the way that his lats and his chest look, and even how they kind of insert into his waist. And he's got sharp abs, but just not very pleasing to look at. So I feel like very similar to Dorian in the upper body. In the lower body, I don't know, more like a smaller version of Big Ramy. Like he's got crazy sweep, but just not a ton of detail or there's no cuts here. So that's one thing I was pointing out that he has to work on, because Jay really brings that. And as messy as Jay's midsection was, I feel like it's way better than this still. He doesn't have that ugly gap, and it's just way more kind of cut. So what I didn't like about Jay is these love handles, which Dallas doesn't have it too much, but this is a 25-year-old Dallas versus a around 28-year-old Jay, so he's got about 3 years on him. So we'll see if Dallas's midsection remains this trim 3 years from now. In the crab most muscular pose, again, you can see the dominant delts here, just kind of stealing the show. The arms are also massive. They look like, from the shoulder and arm standpoint, he's just whooping Jay, but Jay is just murking him in the chest. So Dallas really, this is the centerpiece of this pose, and he's kind of missing that piece of the puzzle. It really needs a lot more thickness and striations and stuff I'd like to see to just really complete this pose, because the frame is excellent. The traps, the delts, the arms, these wheels look amazing with the sweep and these killer calves down here, but the chest just leaves a lot to be desired. He also needs a little bit more separation between his traps and his shoulders and his arms, etc. But other than that, I think he's still his outline and everything looks more impressive than Jay's, and he has the potential to be much better in this pose than Jay ever was. But he's got to work on some things, right? And in this version, the hands clasped, most muscular. I mean, it's just not even a comparison, because these massive delts. This is kind of like Kevin Levrone with the huge cannonball delts just dominating this pose. So this is a pose where it actually is to your benefit to have overpowering delts, because that's what guys like Kevin Levrone and even Phil Heath to a degree are able to do with these massive delts and arms. It just really looks amazing in this position. So Jay didn't quite have that here. That's okay though. I mean, it wasn't really one of the poses that he hit a lot. I could barely even find a photo of him doing this. So that's it. That's my 2 cents. So the point of this video was not to kind of say Dallas is better than Jay or anything, even though I did make a lot of points in his favor. I obviously still think Jay's a better bodybuilder, and that's quite evident in his record, in his placings, in his contest history. But I'm just saying Dallas has a lot of potential. So I don't think we should, don't get on the hype train just yet. My advice would be, let's just wait. These next 2 to 3 years are going to be very telling. How much he can progress and whether he's able to bring up his weak points or not. But my advice to the guy would be don't try to play the mass game. Don't try and get any bigger. You already have enough raw mass to work with. Just kind of hone in on your weak points and refine what you already have. That's all you got to do. Because if you try and get much bigger, man, your midsection is going to get blown out and you're just going to be a wreck. Your career is going to end prematurely. So if you want to have any kind of longevity, play it slow, play it safe, And just kind of do like what Dexter Jackson does. Just show up more or less the same every year, maybe add 2 or 3 pounds of muscle in between shows, and just continue to refine and improve in little ways like that. That's all you got to do. So anyways, guys, that's my opinion. Let me know in the comments what you think. Feel free to like and subscribe for more. Until next time, I'm the Tominator signing off, and I'll be back.